Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Terry Yoder, and he has an amazing story for us today. Hi, Terry.
Hi, dear. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I'm very anxious to hear how this started with you. You had several NDEs.
Yes. Um, Peggy, my birth was an NDE. I was born March 18th, 1965, and I was actually taken cesarean 2 months early. So I was born at 7 months. Um, my mother developed toxemia and they had to take me. So, and a couple of peculiar things about that is when they opened my mother, I literally sprung up and threw my hands up for them to take me. And the doctor told my mother, "Are you ready for this one?" um, but the other thing that's interesting about my birth, Peggy, is that I remember it. I remember the color of the walls. I remember, in 1965, those cloth blue masks that tied at the bottom at the top, the hats that they wore, the bright lights in surgery. I remember all of that. And specifically, I remember the colors of the walls, that mint green, institutional green. I see that very, very clearly. But that was my first near death experience. At the time, I weighed 3 pounds. They were predicting that either I or my mother or both of us would pass. That didn't happen, of course. And I think that first near death experience was my process of choosing to stay or equalizing on the earth plane because I am a super hyper empath. And, coming into the earth plane is a bit dense, especially in 1965 with all of the race issues and the rioting and that sort of thing. I stepped in at a very, very dense time. So I feel like that first near death experience kind of helped me, gave me the courage perhaps to stay on the planet. And my
Fighter,
childhood was, I'm sorry,
fighter.
yes, made me a fighter and made me a survivor, prepared me for everything that was to come. I was raised in an east central country Indiana town where psychic phenomenon and spirituality is really kind of unknown. It's all very much heavy duty fundamentalist Christianity. Um, because I was different and open, I guess. And I know that that's true because I ran into many years ago, I ran into a lady who had babysat me. And she said, "Honey, you were the easiest kid to babysit. You would just go out in that front lawn and sit down under that oak tree and just sit there for hours." And so uh, when I got into school and such, though, being somewhat different, wasn't really accepted all that well. And I experienced a lot of bullying and a lot of difficulty going through the educational system. Um, by the age of 14, I really didn't have much self esteem at all. And I really kind of was struggling to find my value. And that is when May of 1979, when I was 14 years old, is when I had the most prominent near death experience. Um, when I came to from that, it was about 2 days later that I realized that everything that I looked at, every blade of grass, every leaf on every tree had a thin golden aura light around it. And I'm like, well, something's up. That's not normal. But I just sort of went with it. I didn't know whether it was just something, a fluke, and it would disappear. But a few weeks later, I was sent on over to Arizona to every year I would go to Arizona and spend some time with my grandmother. And then we would drive back together to Indiana, and she would stay the summer. And then at the end of the summer, I would drive back with her and then fly home. So
Excuse me, how did you die at 14? I'm curious.
I had a near-death experience, sweetheart. I had a very lonely childhood, and I finally met this one friend, and he taught me how to huff gasoline. So by huffing gasoline to get high, I actually exited my body, and I could see myself sitting there. I was hovering above my body, and I was getting further and further and further away from my physical body. And I noticed that it was kind of getting dark around me as the further I went back, and that made me uneasy. And then, by the grace of God, my father opened the garage door, and I was thrust back into my body and was basically saved physically.
Okay.
So, going through school was a little bit tough. I went to my grandmother's that summer, and out of nowhere, Peggy, there was a deck of tarot cards in a drawer. And at the time, my grandmother didn't even know where they came from. So I knew what they were. I'd seen them in movies and things. I didn't know anything about them, but it came with a little book, and there was another book with it. And I started messing with those, and oh my God, they just came to life for me. And my grandmother's like, honey, the stuff that you're getting is really unbelievable, but we don't talk about those things. So I kind of had to learn a little bit of tact in the very beginning. But I had a lot of encouragement from my grandmother, and
How do these
I
cards work?
how
I've never
what?
seen it. I've never seen them. How do they have symbols? I mean,
Yes. There's 78 cards of the deck. Actually, there's the best one of the entire deck, the world. And there's all kinds of symbolism on them. I mean, here's the lion of Leo, here's the bull of Taurus. There's all kinds of symbolism on. There's the sun. Boy, we're getting all the good cards today, Peggy. But they do have symbolism on them. Each card has several meanings upright and several meanings reversed. And those cards just came to life for me, sweetheart. In the beginning, I would use the little book and the book that accompanied it. And as I'm going through the meanings of the cards, literally, it is as if certain ones are highlighted for me as I'm going through the book, and I would just pick those. Well, what was happening, honestly, was that Spirit was honing my empathic ability and my psychic intuitiveness to know what meanings to gravitate towards. So I worked those cards that summer like crazy. And my grandmother ended up giving them to me. So at the end of that summer, though, Peggy, things took a turn, and I was led into a form of fundamentalist Pentecostalism for 3.5 years. Well, the tarot reading thing did not go well there. Several other things did not go well there either. But I cannot say that it was a bad experience. I learned a lot. I was very strongly influenced and taught about spiritual gifts very early on in that experience. I literally had all of the fruits of the Spirit showing forth through me at 14. And I would sing. I was a gospel singer, a music minister. I worked a lot with youth. I traveled around and sang for different Christian organizations. But Peggy, and I'm not here to bash anybody's religion. I still consider myself a Christian. But I couldn't find the love of Christ amongst the people.
I understand.
I'm experiencing the same bullying in the church and jealousy because I've got the gifts as I would in the real world. And it's like, where is the love of Christ?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of let out of there around 17 and a half. And I had some experiences where it was very clear to me that it was absent the love of Christ. So I just left and I picked up the spiritual gifts that I had left behind, and they were even more powerful and even more intense. So I continued to work with the cards and work with family and friends and loved ones and people that I would meet. It wasn't until, let me see, it was 1984. I would have been 19, 20 years old at that time. I moved to the town of Dayton, Ohio, and went to work for a large organization. And I happened to run into a lady there that did readings. I says, well, I do readings too. So we shared, we did a reading share together. Well, then it actually word got out that I did readings, and these other two women came to me and they wanted to come and have a reading. So at the time I read at my kitchen table, and these two ladies came over, and that's where it all started. One of the ladies that she brought said, oh, honey, you should go over. There's a metaphysical bookstore over by the mall. You should go over there. I bet they would have you as a reader. And they did. So I started reading for the public in 1984, 1985, at the age of 19, 20 years old. By 20, I was teaching. I had my first tarot class. That was an amazing experience. People learned and people developed so powerfully. It was just unreal. So I've been reading nonstop since 1984, and continued to live there in the Dayton area until 1988. In 88, I moved to Cincinnati, and that's where the gifts really started to blossom. I really developed a major clientele, and I was working as a travel agent by day and psychic by night, until at one point it just became obvious to me that, and going through my Saturn return, I literally was ejected from my position at the travel agency. And I went home and I says, okay, Spirit, now what do I do? Because I had pretty much put readings aside and was focusing on the corporate. And a little voice spoke to my heart and says, go back to doing what you know to do. I go, well, I believe that I am hearing you tell me that I need to go back and do my readings. And Peggy, instantly, honey, the phone rang. And I went to the phone, and there on the phone was this fellow that was a client of mine that I hadn't seen in, maybe 8 years. And he's sobbing. I said, sweetheart, what is wrong? He's like, Terry, I don't know. I don't understand this. He says, just a second ago, you flashed in front of my face, and I realized that without your help, there's no way that I would have ever been anywhere near where I am today. And I have so much gratitude for you. Now, that call came within seconds of me saying, I feel like you're wanting me to go back and do readings. So there's the validation. There's the clarity that I needed. My dear, I opened up a small travel agency in my home to service clients that I had, but predominantly I did readings. I was book solid. I had all the business that I wanted, and continued that practice for quite a while until 1997. And in 1997, I had had the experience of having come to the San Francisco Bay Area to work as a tour guide. And I met some lovely people here and did some readings and fell in love with it. Well, when I went home, I couldn't get rest. I could not be at rest. I had opened this San Francisco energy, and I wanted to leave the Midwest so badly. It took me 3 years to gain the strength and the courage to make the move, but I did. And after a couple years of practicing and giving myself permission to be here, things just started to blossom for me. I worked as the travel agent only until I could build up a clientele here that could support me. And let me see, that happened, that opened for me in 2001. I had just completed massage school. There was an Enron energy crisis that really affected the economy of California, and I literally had 3 companies go bankrupt on the same day. So, needless to say, I lost my job. I was laid off. And when I was laid off, my partner came home that night and said, "Hey, I just think this is God's way of telling you that it's time for you to do your work." Peggy, honey, I never wanted for anything, sweetheart. I have been taken care of ever since. As a matter of fact, a few days after getting laid off, I got a phone call from an organization that I had submitted a resume to work as a massage therapist about 2 years prior. Never had heard anything. Now, all of a sudden, I'm laid off, and now I'm getting a call wanting me to come in and interview. Well, they hired me on the spot. And the first day that I'm there working, I go to lunch, I'm walking down the street, and I happen to look over and there's a crystal store. Now, Peggy, I have walked past that thing 1,000 times and never noticed it. So I wonder if they'd want a reader. So I walked across the street. I walked in and introduced myself. "Hello, I'm Terry Yoder. I'm a clairvoyant medium, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in having a psychic reader here." The guy looked at me and went, he says, "Terry, our reader just quit 5 minutes ago." So I interviewed and I got the position. I was booked solid 3 days a week. I grew my clientele. I opened my own center in San Francisco and have just continued increasing and increasing my clientele and my service. I traveled all over the country, did radio shows, television shows, that sort of thing. And then in 2006, Peggy, I had my 3rd near-death experience. I was driving home from a show in Fresno, California, and at 10:01 p.m. on July 6th, 2006, I was in a head-on collision at 72 miles an hour. And there were a lot of things that I was being resistant to prior to that accident. And literally, sweetheart, I feel like that accident came in here and moved me off of my resistant path and put me into a position where I had to openly embrace change. When you're laying in a facility learning to walk again for 4 months, you're a little bit vulnerable and pliable as to what needs to happen as opposed to what you want to happen. Even that I cannot say was a bad experience. Part of that experience when they finally got me out of the car, before they got me out of the car, Peggy, there was a fellow who showed up, a physical, real human being. He was actually the man that was in the car behind me. He saw everything, and he came to my window. He handed me my wallet. He handed me my phone. He checked in on me. He kept going back and forth between me and the other fellow. Well, every time he would walk away, there would be about 100 feet away from me, this fellow, handsome guy with odd curly hair. And after 3 or 4 times of the physical man coming back and forth, this fellow comes up and says, "Terry, I'm Ben. I've come to be with you in this moment so you don't have to have this experience alone. May I touch you?" Well, I'm thinking, how does this guy know my name? I said, "Yeah, you can touch me." What am I going to do? I'm trapped in the car. If he's going to touch me, he's going to touch me. So he gently placed his hand on my heart. And when he did, I went limp. And I'm looking into the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen. And it's as if I'm in a trance almost. And he says, "Terry, everything is going to be fine. The one thing that you need to know from this moment moving forward is there is absolutely nothing to worry about. You will heal. This man will heal. Everything will be fine. You have nothing to worry about. Well, then police cars and ambulances started to pull up. And when they did, he stepped back from my car and said, I have to go now. Big smile. Vanished right in front of my face. And I knew that I had been visited by an angel. And sweetheart, all of the things that I was afraid of and fearing, all of the things I was fearing the change of, all of the resistance, it really put me in a place where I could process it and let it go. And it took me about a year and a half. It took me about 3 years for the whole process of change to take place. But it literally moved me to a better place. It moved me to a better position. So I'm in a home that's much more conducive than where I was living. I'm in relationships that are much more conducive than what I was living in before, and my work has skyrocketed. It's just skyrocketed.
You think it helped with your psychic abilities? Okay.
Each time I feel like I've gone up a level. The first time it's like, okay, chill out, stay here. The second time it's like, okay, look, these are your gifts. And then the third time it's like, if these are your gifts, why are you in a state of fear? Let it go and let go and let God, so to speak. And that's really what happened. And then it was about, let me see, that would have been 2006. In 2014, my guides came to me, and as they had with many readings before for other people, my guides came to me and said, you know, Terry, we talk a lot up to you about people having had lives in religious service and the fact that they have had to take vows for that religious service, like in Catholicism, the vow of poverty, chastity, humility, obedience, service, and sometimes silence. They said, it's time for you to relinquish your vows. You are very connected to poverty and humility, and you need to relinquish these vows. So I did. Said, God, angels, and guides, I ask that you intervene for me, intervene on my behalf. I ask that you cut the cords and remove all contact with any vows, oaths, and creeds made in this lifetime or any lifetime previous that are hindering me or holding me back in any way. And I give thanks knowing it is done, and it was done. Well, I was very plugged into poverty, which really restricts money flow. And I was very plugged into humility, which is like no visibility, no credit for anything. And when I relinquished those vows, Peggy, it was 3 days later, and I was contacted by a man by the name of Anthony Shen, who asked me to participate in a documentary about near-death experiences. When I did that, and he published that video in September of 2014, within half hour of that going online, I had emails from Australia thanking me for being the light that I am in the world. And it has shifted my clientele to be global. I never know where I'm going to be working. I've even had clients in places like Greenland, and it has just opened global. A lot in Europe, a lot in Asia, South America. It's just been breathtaking to see where all people are coming from. And I always ask, how did you find me? And Peggy, it is unbelievable the mass number of people who say, well, you know, I was sitting there working on my computer and I stepped away for a few minutes and I saw all of a sudden I started hearing voices coming out of my computer room. And when I went in, YouTube was on and your video was playing. And I really needed to hear what you said. So I thought I would call and have a session. I hear that so often. It's really amazing. But it came at the exact right moment in time, in relinquishing those vows. And I had a spiritual teacher best friend and spiritual teacher, who had told me a week before, about 10 days before I got the call from Anthony Shen. He said, "Sweetheart, Spirit's telling me that there's something coming for you and you need to be looking for this. This is an opportunity. This is going to really change things and move you into a vibration of prosperity." And there it is. Interesting enough, the day before I was contacted, Peggy, my spiritual teacher and best friend died. And I was just such in grief. And then I get this email asking me to participate in this video, and I didn't half believe it. But then I heard my friend say, "Sweetheart, you're going to want for nothing." So I did it, and it's been one of the best things that I've ever done. It's brought a lot of beautiful light to people. Anthony Shen is an amazing, amazing filmmaker on YouTube, and he does amazing work to bring spirit to light in
Yeah, they
people's
do.
lives. So that's really, and I do use tarot, but as time has gone, I teach tarot, I use tarot for my readings, but it more or less just flows through me now. As I start a conversation with someone, I hear, feel, see, know, sense, empath, intuit, psychically receive, clairvoyantly receive, and it all happens at the same time. It just sort of, I become a modem and it just starts flowing through me. A lot of times I won't even know what I'm talking about. And when I finish a reading, I don't remember hardly anything about it. But the more in the dark I am, the more on point it seems to be. So.
Fascinating.
And that has really been one of the processes of the process, Peggy, is trusting the situation, trusting the process of growth, to step back and to have faith and allow things to happen. Because working with groups and things, sometimes what you get isn't easy to deliver. So, but when you have faith and trust in what you're receiving, there's always a tremendous positive purpose for it. I've had meetings, one of the largest meetings that I ever did, the first person that I opened up to, Spirit gave me some very peculiar and difficult information to deliver, and I really hesitated. But when I did deliver that, the entire room burst into laughter, and I had every single person in the palm of my hand. They now knew and believed, because I had said something, as embarrassing as it was highly accurate, and everyone knew. So trusting the process is something that I am learning more and more about each and every day. And I try very hard to stay right in that zone where I'm always in a state of trust. It's a lot easier when you're working with other people, but when it involves you, that's a little more difficult.
So are you always using the cards, or do
Not
you?
always.
Okay.
I use them a lot now for confirmation. I mean, there are certain styles of readings that I do that I use them. As a matter of fact, Peggy, I do a big sale twice a year and highlight a reading called a life path reading. And I have, as of this year, extended that reading and made it larger. So now there's two different forms of the life path. The first life path is we answer any questions that might be asked over a 15-20 minute period, and then we remix the cards, and I lay out a grouping of 36 cards. Well, there are 365 days in a year, so each card on the table roughly represents a 10-day period of the next calendar year. And we go 10 day by 10 day by 10 day, and we talk about what that person may be encountering and dealing with during that period of time. A lot of my clients will transcribe that onto a calendar and then mark it off as it happens. The accuracy on those continues to blow me away. Now, the extended version that I did this year is huge. Instead of being 36 cards, it is 74 cards, 72 cards. And what it is we take 6 subjects of your life that you choose, and we follow them through a 12-month period. So love, money, relationship, work, career, family, health. There's 6 subjects. We will follow all of those through a pattern of the next 12 months. When I started doing this reading, it became really amazing to me because, oh, wow, something is happening here in June regarding your finances. And it looks like, oh, wow, there's an upset in health as well. So it gives me the ability to sort of link things like, okay, this could happen and that could affect this, and this. And then the reading also looks at the overall theme of one's year, opportunities that may come during the year, obstacles and difficulties that may have to be looked at during the year, and unexpected events that could occur within the year. So all of that is covered. It is a humongous reading. It takes 90 minutes. It takes every card of the deck except 2. Fills my entire table. I can't even photograph it because it's so large, but a lot of information, and it's right on. Everyone just absolutely loves both forms of the life path reading.
Is it like, say, if you flip over this card, it means this? That it means that, like it's always that. It's like the cards are given the reading, not like it's coming through you.
Well, I have the person focus on what they want to know, and I have them focus on their 6 subjects over the course of a 12-month period. While that's happening, I'm mixing the cards and I'm focusing on them and what they've asked for. When they feel that I'm finished, they tell me to stop, and then I lay out the cards. Now, every card of the entire deck has about 35, 40 meanings upright, and they all overlap. Then reversed, they have about 35 meanings or so as well. And again, they all overlap. So as I'm going through and looking at the cards that are on the table, I'm hearing, feeling, and getting even sometimes a visual sense, most usually an empathic, emotional sense of what each card relates to. So as an example, the death card rarely means death. It means change and transformation. Sometimes it's a good thing. It can represent the ending of a horrible, abusive relationship. So it can represent amazing change, putting you in the position of gaining the money and the freedom that you deserve. But it can occasionally represent death. So being able to feel and sense, oh, honey, I have this death card falling here. And on some occasions, I'm really concerned about your mother's health. And I feel like she's gaining strength and moving toward the process of starting her transition. Most of the time, I see change. I see movement in a new direction. There's going to be opportunity. You need to be on the lookout for it. You need to say yes to this as it comes about. If I have enough cards, if I draw certain cards in a reading, it's kind of hard with the extended life path because I'm only left with 2. But cards like the death card and the tower card, and a few others, I have a tendency when those fall, I'll drop another one on top of it. And that gives me the direction of what death or the tower is trying to make room for. It shows me what happens beyond. The last class that I taught, it'll be 2 years ago this April. It started and concluded in July. I really worked hard on getting everything in writing for this class. And I also taught them very strongly about how to use the reading as a springboard for like a storyboard in a movie. And out of the 11 people globally that were in the class, 6, I would say, are ready to hang a shingle and literally start working with the public. I saw one lady just open clairvoyantly in the course of this class. So it's a lovely experience. I never know what I'm going to deal with or hear or see. Sometimes things are very heavy and a little difficult for me to let go of, but I work on it and really am working towards solid consistency and clearing myself after each reading. Some readings really draw a tremendous amount of love and compassion from me. It's just amazing what people go through. I just never know what or who I'm going to be dealing with. So
Besides the doing the cards and having something scheduled like that, do you pick up on things like just randomly, like going through the store or whatever?
occasionally, but being the level of empath that I am, Peggy, I feel that I do better when I protect myself and shut down going out into the real world. And especially since COVID has come about, that has completely changed the vibration of the planet. And during that process, oh my God, everybody was all in an uproar, and the right didn't know what the left was doing, and everybody had their own opinion. And it was kind of a blessing that everything moved home and gave me the ability to center everything here. But when I go out, sweetie, it's not like I feel directed to go and speak to people or to give them messages or anything like that. It has happened, but only a few times. For
Okay,
the
I was
most
just
part, I
curious.
close down. And I'm very big on, hey, God, anybody who needs me, anybody who needs to experience my work, anyone that you need me to touch, you need to touch through me, you bring them. And it happens. They walk away and their computer starts talking and it's my video. So a lot of trust involved in my work.
Interesting, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I've now been reading for 44 years.
Wow.
So
All started at your grandma's house, find a deck of cards.
yes. As a matter of fact, honey, I just needed to feel my mother, my grandma, my mom's sister, and my uncle, who was also very psychic and empathic and a healer. And I asked them, please, you all, I just need to feel your energy. Just come to me in a dream. Well, no dream was had. But I got up the next morning and the light in my kitchen was turned on and every cabinet door was opened. And as I went in there and went, okay, what's this all about? I hear my grandmother say, well, you don't remember your dreams anyway, so that's kind of worthless. So, hey, it worked. It gave me the same good feeling that I would have had having a visitation in a dream. So
Grandma
So
knows best.
I use the cards, Peggy, but I'm also a medium. So I hear, feel, and see. I hear from the other side. I get messages from the other side. So, yeah. One thing I think is really important for people to know who are starting the process of exploring getting readings and getting mediumship readings and such is not everybody works the same. People expect me to work like the Long Island medium. I'm not the Long Island medium. I'm not Tyler. I'm not John Edward. It comes to me in my unique way. And in actuality, all of the fruits of the Spirit are listed in the 13th chapter of First Corinthians. And if we go there and look at that, it lists all the gifts, and it says, it's the same God that brings this gift and the same energy that causes it to happen. But each person that has it will use a unique expression of that. The other thing that it says at the very end is, unto everyone is given as much as these gifts as he would will, meaning the person receiving the gift. So do I feel like there's anything really special about me? No. I've just learned to listen and learn to accept. So.
Well, it's very interesting. And I appreciate you explaining all that, because I'm kind of clueless, on the whole card thing. Because
A lot of people will say,
background.
oh, I can't do cards. That threatens my relationship with Jesus Christ. Well, they're pieces of paper with ink. And all they do is incite thought process. The devil card has no more power to possess you or release Satan into your life than the man on the moon. They're just symbols that cause your mind to open to and grasp certain subjects and apply them in a position where they have meaning for edification.
Well, a lot of people think NDEs are the devil. It's false prophets, or it's the devil fooling us into believing that these are angels or good things. And I see it in the comments all the time.
Yeah, I've gone through that to the point where I've actually had to shut comments off. My sense on that, Peggy, is that if it offends you, or if it doesn't ring true with you, then don't watch.
Right. So I say, what are you watching NDEs for? If you don't believe him,
Right.
or you think they're the devil, then why are you here?
Right.
And I don't have any trouble blocking people from the channel if they get continue and
right. So, and it's amazing how so many come with such nastiness and hate.
And it's supposed to be Christian.
Where's the love?
Yeah. Yeah, like, I could have a guest, and they spend this hour talking about the horrible abuse they went through, and then they tell their NDE and they're mad that took so long to get to the NDE. And I'm like, you don't have compassion for people and what they've went through. You just want to hear about the afterlife. Like, stop and think about what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a major Control Alt Delete, reset, reboot. Each one, I mean, I feel like they come for certain purposes, and every one is completely different. But I mean, for me, it literally, the first one was like, okay, we're gonna sell you down and get you to stay here. And then the second one was, okay, look, these are the gifts that you've been given, and we want you to learn how to use them. And then the third one was like, okay, look, you've gotten resistance on the pathway of your progress, and you're literally in your own way. So there, now you're in a hospital bed for 4 months learning to walk. Now there's no resistance, and we can move forward for you. So there is one person out there on Facebook who contacted me at one point, and I'm not the best on Facebook and computer stuff, but this person had actually said to me that the person that I described as Ben, having come to me in my accident, is someone that he's had an experience with as well. He's certain it's the right person. And my darling, I lost that message and cannot get back to that person. So if by chance that person happens to see this, please contact me again, because I'd love to hear about it.
So. Do you want to leave a contact and your website and things?
I would
put
be
that in the
delighted.
for you.
You can check availability and schedule appointments online on my website, which is very simply terryyoder.com. TERRYYODER.com. It's a secure website, so there's no risk of identity theft or anything like that. Your credit card is processed privately. I never see the numbers, don't have access to it at anything at all. I will say also, I am going to be hosting another round of classes in May or June. And anybody interested in learning tarot or psychic development, please send me an email from my website. If you go to terryyoder.com and click the contact page, it then gives you the ability to forward me an email. Just put in the subject line, interested in tarot classes. I'll put you on the list and contact them as soon as the classes are scheduled.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Is there anything else you'd like to add or leave us with?
I don't think so. I really appreciate this opportunity, Peggy, very much. I thank you. Thank you for having me
welcome.
today.
You're welcome. Best of luck to you.
You too, dear. God bless.
Bye-bye.